Welcome to the Gap We Live In podcast, where we share life, purpose, and everything in between. Make sure you join the conversation and leave with tools to build bridges instead of burning them. I hope you get the ideas you need to make the gap smaller instead of increasing it. Because remember, whatever it is, you're not stuck, you're just in the gap. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gap We Live In podcast. I am your host, Gwendolyn Albright, and today's episode is about how to find the gap that you live in while you are trying to heal trauma. Because one thing that we always don't realize is that some fulfillment, we think it's fulfillment, but it's actually trauma response. And that, of course, I will never say or talk about things that I haven't gone through myself. Sometimes I was in the gaps and I was making those gaps actually bigger. But what was happening is I was in trauma response kind of situation. I'll give a few examples here and there, and I hope some of you will relate and will feel encouraged that being in those gaps while trying to heal from trauma is a process, and it's a season that you need to go through so that at the end of the day you will be on the other side and actually do be fulfilled. So one of the biggest thing, especially in my life, I always talk about relationships and how for the longest I thought I was the bestest of friends because I had a lot of friends everywhere I would go. I would make friends. However, I couldn't keep them. But what I didn't know at the time is that there was something inside of me that actually was fearing to keep them. And how my trauma response was in my head, and it was subconscious, of course, because everybody love keeping friends. My trauma response was, I am going to leave before you are going to hurt me, because I know you're going to hurt me. I know you are going to find something in me and you're going to doubt that I am the friend that you decided to bring in your life. So I would basically cut off people with no good reason and without realizing it. Actually, in my head, it will get to a point where I'm like, I'm too busy. They will ask me to hang out, and I just wasn't available for them. But now when I look back, it's because I didn't trust myself to be the friend that they needed. And that was detrimental, because if I had known at the time, I would probably have done it differently, have conversations that I didn't have at the time, maybe even bring up those fears and say, I'm scared you're gonna leave. And that happened to me the biggest time that happened to me, and it affected a person that was absolutely dear to my heart, still is, because he's my husband now. Spoiler alert, I got married to him. I remember, so we were in a long distance relationship while I was in college here. And ever since we met, ever since we were in a relationship, he was always very clear that he was going to marry me. I was the woman that he wanted to be with. And that was just it. And he walked the talk. He really, treated me as a wife in ways that obviously, like long distance, like always checking up on me, always making sure he knows what's going on, always making sure he's praying for me. He introduced me to his parents very early on because in his mind, I was the one he had prayed for. But with me, because I had a lot of issues, most of it was really daddy issues. Now I know that, but at the time I didn't. I didn't trust a man to love me forever. To me, I couldn't believe that a man could love me forever. So fast forward, we were in a relationship, and then when I was going to graduate, I know, there's some conversations you start having and you're like, wait, this man wants to propose. And then I started freaking out. I started like, I don't think I'm ready. I started doubting. I started thinking like, this man is an amazing man, but I am not the one for him. I started doubting. I started just in my head, me being with him forever, just, it wasn't there. I couldn't see the picture. And that was the gap that I was living in. And then guess what your girl did? I broke up with him. And my excuse, and I remember even telling him this, I was like, you are ready to get married. I am not. Please find somebody who is so that you don't waste time. And now I think about it, and we've talked about it, that was so selfish of me, because this man has invested in me. So I have invested in him too, but then I would rather lose that investment than go in the unknown. And I feel like a lot of people do that, is you get to a point where you're really gonna commit, but the picture is just not there. You can't see how that looks like, but you're also very just scared that it's just not fulfilling. You're like, at that time, I don't remember especially a lot of things that happened that time, but honestly, I think it's just my trauma. I kind of erased a little bit of everything, but I remember just convincing myself that I should work on me without him. But that was truly a trauma response flight mode, because I could have worked on myself with him, because this man, I mean, now I'm living it. This man would have given me space. We would have talked through this thing. It was going to be hard, especially because it was long distance, but absolutely there's no doubt that he would have been a safe place for me to find myself. But of course, the Lord is amazing, and He used it for the good. During that time, I went into missions. I found myself, and He also found His calling. And then at the end of the day, we did meet up, and praise the Lord, because I remember just every time somebody would come, mind you, I was praying for my husband, and I was hoping that I would meet my husband during that time. But I remember every time that a guy would approach me, I would always compare him, because he had obviously set the bar too high. So that's just an example of like how most people that have had specific traumas, especially as young girls, as people that grew up in homes that were not stable or were lacking things, sometimes we think we are going for fulfillment or for purpose, but we're really running away from healing and trying what is the next best thing. So that's a gap that I want to talk to today, to discuss today, and encourage you to give yourself space and give yourself permission to think the next decision that I am thinking of making, am I saying it, or am I thinking of it through the lens of hurt? Am I looking at it through the lens of lack? Am I looking at it through the lens that I might not be worth of it? Because that was my story. And it was very sad, because during that time my gap became bigger. The gap became huge. I lost a lot of friends during that season, because again, this was a man that, he knew a lot of almost everything about me, and he would talk to me to sleep. And I remember the first few months after breaking up with him, I couldn't sleep at night. I was struggling. It was just so bad. And during that time, obviously, I was grumpy. I was miserable, to be totally honest. So I just hope that I'm here. This podcast is here so that you don't have to go through that. Yeah. So I hope I hope there is somebody that is relating to that, and I am helping you not making the same mistake that I make. And then another, and I'm gonna try to talk more about it, is or another one that I've found is being a workaholic in the name of providing for the family, which makes the gap between the relationship with your family bigger. So I give that as, and I've thought about this more now that I have a daughter that is absolutely depending on my husband and I. And of course, in the first few months, she was almost 100% depending on me. But there was that choice of how much am I going to give the work, my work, and how much am I going to give her. And obviously, it's different for every family, it's different for every country, every career. I'm not telling every woman go be a stay-at-home mom, but what I'm saying is, are you asking the right questions when you are making those decisions? Are you thinking of her development? Are you thinking of, in the next 5 years, what does how do I want my relationship with my daughter, my son, to look like, and what kind of investment am I supposed to do so that you'd get the result? So I remember when I gave birth to her, she was born during the end of the year, and I was able to get like vacation time after maternity leave. So I went back to work when I was 4 months postpartum, and honestly, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I still remember that day, just going to work crying. I mean, if you are a mom, you know what I'm talking about. I remember I asked my maid of honor, does it get better? And then she said, it gets better when you give birth to your second. And I'm like, so I have to go through it again so that it gets better. But we'll see how that goes. But it was so hard. But then I remember going into that work and just asking myself, am I really fulfilled? I loved my job, and I absolutely love architecture and what I was doing. However, now I am a mom. Now I have this whole human being depending on me, and I'm like looking how much I'm making, and and comparing it to how much time my daughter is not seeing me, and the math was just not mathing. And then also what my husband was doing, so he had to stay with her and everything. But just in general, a lot of people, a lot of us, because you might have lived in lack for a long time, then you don't want to be in lack, like in terms of finances and resources. You're like, I would rather not have lack. I would rather give my daughter clothes, like, and throw parties for her, and take her to Disney World, and give those material things, rather than, because you didn't have that, or I don't know. I mean, obviously, take it the way you need to take it. But to me, especially because research shows that the 0 to 3 years, there is a lot of brain development, and in the child needs their primary giver, and that primary giver can be mother or father, but it needs to be someone consistent, because she's learning safety. She's learning how to be paused. And I can see that so much in my daughter now, because now when she's going to make a decision of, is this fun or is it not fun, usually she looks at me or she looks at my husband. And those things are very key, because if I am in my head, if she's in daycare, and I love daycare people. I have a friend who works in the daycare, and she loves her children. She calls them her children, and she's doing an amazing job. But in my head, if my daughter needs somebody, are they always there for them the way I would be there for them? Again, this is just personal. So I'm just giving, basically, all I'm doing is giving you space to have those conversations, to have those wandering thoughts of what do I want for my family? What does fulfillment look like? And to me, fulfillment in motherhood is that my daughter will know that she's priority. As much as possible, that my husband knows that before anything else, I'm going to choose him. I'm going to choose my family. So going back to my job, it was obviously giving me the resources. However, it wasn't giving me the fulfillment compared to what motherhood would give me. So long story short, a few months in, I had served in that place for a long time, and I was looking at what would 5 years, 3 years from now look like, and it just wasn't just wasn't fulfilling anymore. And as much as I ask, because that's another thing that I want to encourage you to, is that explorer that I always mention, ask questions. What does promotions look like? How much more money am I gonna get? Is it worth? Can I go part-time? Because that was another option that I was thinking, to go part-time. However, if I had gone part-time, then it was just not gonna make sense financially and fulfilling wise, in terms of career wise. So now I remember when I resigned, that day I slept better. Because it got to a point where I could not sleep well because I wasn't fulfilled at work, and I realized that I was losing myself. And then in my head, if I'm losing myself because of work, what am I giving my daughter? And I'm breastfeeding, so in my head I'm like, what am I even giving her through the breast milk? It's the doubts, it's the unfulfilled thoughts, it's the doubt, wondering and all these things. And to me, it just wasn't making sense. So my husband and I decided that it's better off to take a pause, and then we will reevaluate. And that's what we're doing right now. And I'm the most fulfilled that I have. Of course, I'm not gonna lie. It was a hard decision, but yet again, I look at my daughter now, the few months that we've been together, and I'm like, this was worth it. I would rather not, do stuff that I could do when I was at work, but I am with her. I saw her first steps. Now she loves talking, and just seeing her in the morning call me and wanting to tell me I don't know what she's telling me really, but it's amazing that she feels safe with me. And as she develops, and another thing that I kept telling myself is, I'm gonna have to answer questions to her. If right now she would ask me, why are you going to work? What would I answer her? And to me, the answer was just not satisfying. So it was easier for me to be in that transitional stage, so that I know that I have the answer to my daughter and to my family. So I encourage you. So basically, I've heard so many stories of the mom, the excuses, I need to go to work. And mind you, I'm doing, if I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I am also pursuing a PhD, doctorate degree in organizational leadership. And actually my dissertation, it is about the gap between fulfillment and survival. And that's the gap we live in is a huge part of my work that I have started while I pursue that degree. But what I'm saying is, I had a lot on my plate already, but I needed to eliminate what is not fulfilling. And especially when it comes to it being tied to my trauma, because the biggest trauma in that is I just didn't want my daughter to lack. But if she was going to lack something, it was not my presence, if that makes sense. So I encourage you, where you are, where you're at, think about the traumas that might be influencing the decisions that you have, and then try to see them for it's a season that you're going through, but be vigilant. Be picky. Be picky in, I need to call it what it is. Call it what it is. Because I remember when I went back to, I know I'm bouncing back and forth, but when I was thinking about getting married and everything, I remember realizing the biggest gap is that I don't trust men, period. I don't think men can love you forever. I think they can love you for a season, but I don't think they can love you forever. And what happened was during that time, I was praying about it and just, journaling and listening to podcasts. And one of the books that it's a popular book now, Relationship Goals. And I was reading a lot of books, and I hope I remember to always share books that has helped me throughout my journey. So maybe it can help you. So definitely Relationship Goals had helped me just think about it. And then another thing, I was also doing prayers for my future husband, because my mind, he is alive. So I'm going to start praying for him. So while I was praying for him, I was getting revelations of, oh wait, a husband is supposed to, this is what the Lord promises. And the fact that I'm praying for it, he's going to provide that. So that built in me that confidence that it's going to happen. And honestly, it has. I keep seeing it every day. And another book is Emotional Intelligence. Emotional Intelligence really helped me position the different friendships that I was having, because one of the things that he discussed, it's by Dr. Darius Daniel, and then the Relationship Goals, it's by Pastor Michael Todd. And then the other journals, honestly, I just went on Amazon and found Prayer for My Husband, and I'll just get those. But yeah, Darius Daniels just talked about like difference between, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, difference between a project, like some people come in your life that are projects, some people come in your life that are mentors, some people come in your life that are friends. I don't remember if he calls them friends, but there is different categories. And that really helped me realize, like, oh, that person came into my life and he was really a project, or they were really meant to take the joy that I bring, and that was it. So I didn't really need to invest as much as I invested. And that was detrimental to my emotional intelligence. So that I really encourage, I will link it in the description to help you find it. But that was definitely one book that really helped me. So during that time, the gap was just becoming bigger. So I talked about how I broke up with my boyfriend at the time while he was ready to get married. And then another thing is I just ran. I remember just running away from different kinds of friends. And man, I needed friends during that time, especially because it was that's like a little bit before the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, I needed those friends. Yeah, so I needed those friends. So as much as I wanted, I didn't realize that I was in that gap. It was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. But by the grace of God, it was helpful to, at the end, the Lord used everything, because He says that He uses everything for the good for those who love Him. But one thing before I end that I wanted to mention is when I was praying for my future husband, and I knew that my biggest problem was I didn't believe that men could love me forever. I remember one time I was praying and I was in this prayer conference, and I heard the voice of God saying, I need to introduce you to my sons. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, okay, Lord, I'm here. And during that time, I remember I was struggling financially. I was all over the place, and I didn't have a place to stay. And then something came to my mind. I'm like, wait, my brother lived in Minnesota at the time, and I was like, I wonder if he would want me to come visit him for the meantime. And then I just called him and I said, can I come visit? And he's like, yeah, I have a bed. Just suit yourself, come. And I remember just going, and mind you, it's my brother that we grew up together, but the relationship has not always been so strong. But I needed my brother during that time. And guess what? That was the beginning of him, the Lord, reintroducing me to his sons, starting with my brother. Because my brother during that time took so good care of me. He would take me out. He would cook for me. He did things that I didn't even know he could do for me. Because in our culture, when there is a woman in the home, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing all these things. But my brother would be like, oh, today is cleaning day. I'm going to clean. Do you want to go out? What do you want to do? And basically he's like, just have fun. And that opened up so much in my heart to like, wait a second. My brother does love me. Actually, he loves me. He's enjoying my presence, which I doubted that he would. And that started opening up, thinking of my friends who were men that still talks to me. The one that comes to mind still is one of my best friends. I haven't talked to him. I need to call him and see how he's doing. But we went to school together, and this guy, when I told him about my wedding, for example, oh my gosh, he was over the moon. He was like, I'm coming. And I'm like, all of these things, because he just considers me as his sister. So the Lord introduced me to his sons, starting with my brother. So I wonder what the Lord wants to do in your life. I wonder what gap that you are living in right now. And all you need to do is to realize that and to sit in it and say, I don't trust that a man, that's an example, but I don't trust that a man can love me forever. And another, for me with also just friendships, I was like, I don't think you will, when you find a problem with me, mind you, we're all work in progress. I didn't believe they could give me that grace, but hey, they do because they know you'll do the same. So if you're living in that gap, I just encourage you to take hold of that trauma and say, I'm gonna work on it, and trust me, you are going to be okay at the end of the other side of the valley, because you are meant to not live as a traumatized person. You're meant to live as a thriving and really fulfilled person, individual. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was very encouraging. I hope this gave you space to think and just ask yourself questions that you might have not asked yourself in the past, because I think we don't do a good job in giving space and permission for people to realize traumatic things might be disguising in other things that are really hurting our lives. So I encourage you, sister, I encourage you, brother, you are worth not living in that gap as much or as long as you have. And this is your day. This is your time. Talk to somebody, put it in the comment, text me, write to me. I would be so happy to help you figure out the gap that you live in and what would be the next solution to hopefully get you out of there. So thank you so much. God bless you. This is The Gap We Live In. I am your host, Gwendolyn Albright. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.